Hey everybody, Joe McCall here, and I'm at Starbucks. Still, same place I did my last video. In case you just saw that other video, I wanted to do a little thing here about a common question I get a lot of times from people about mortgage brokers, the option deposit check. A lot of guys getting started in this business start networking with mortgage brokers, which is good, which is what I tell them to do. And they start asking them, telling them about what we do and flipping these lease options. And one of the biggest hurdles that people come across is the mortgage broker says, well, you can't use that option deposit that's made out to the investor towards the tenant buyer's down payment when they get a mortgage in 1 or 2 years. And I get so frustrated when I hear that from mortgage brokers. One of the first things I ask the mortgage broker when they bring that up to me is, have you ever had that problem before? 9.9 times out of 10, it's no, I'm just worried that it'll be a concern. But even with that 1.01% where it is a problem and it is a concern, and they have had that problem before, that's fine. Look, don't worry about it. So there are mortgage brokers out there, there are banks out there that would let you do these deals, and there's creative ways around it. So I just wanted to do this video real quick and kind of squash these potential problems that keep on coming up. And the other thing is mortgage brokers that tell you you can't use rent credits for the down payment. Well, whoever wanted to use rent credits for the down payment? I sure didn't. I never taught that, never would. Rent credits always go towards closing costs or seller concessions or reducing the price of the home. Rent credits never go towards down payment. Anyway, so about this whole issue of can the tenant buyer still get credited this option deposit for their future down payment if the original check was made out to an investor and not the seller. So the guy posted it on the forum tonight, and I just wrote a response, and I hope I didn't sound too rude. I was trying to be as polite as possible, but I have some all capital letters, and I'm looking at this thinking, all right, well, anyway, I wanted to tell you guys, this guy asks a question, I'm just going to read it. He says, I'm having difficulty with my mortgage broker about crediting my assignment fee towards the selling price of the home at closing. Currently, I'm asking for $6,000 down for my lease options. The tenant buyer writes a $3,000 check to the seller and a $3,000 check to me for assigning my option to them. So my mortgage broker is saying she can only credit the first $3,000 towards the down payment at closing because the other check is made out to the investor. So please explain in detail how the money flows. I replied, get a new mortgage broker. That's ridiculous. And let me tell you something else too. I have a guy at QualityCreditLLC.com. He's out of Kentucky. His credit repair company is really, really good, and they also work with a mortgage broker. And we've talked in depth about this before. And this is a mortgage broker that does loans all over the country, and he has no problem at all with using the option money deposit the tenant buyer puts down as part of their down payment 2 or 3 years down the road in the future. They have talked to other underwriters who maybe would have some concerns about that, but he has a bunch of banks that would not have a problem with that. And the other thing that you could do is you could have the tenant buyer make the check out, their option deposit out to an earnest, to an escrow company. That happens all the time in traditional transactions, right? The buyer writes down a earnest money deposit, a couple $1,000, could be $5,000. Let's say it was a $10,000 earnest money deposit, and it gets made out to the escrow company. You think the underwriter is going to say, no, you can't use that towards your deposit because it was made to somebody else? No. So anyway, this guy at QualityCreditLLC.com will allow they have an escrow account. They have an escrow account where the tenant buyer can make the check out to that escrow company. After the transaction's closed, Quality Credit will give you then a check for that amount. You have to use their credit repair services, and you don't have to, but strongly recommend that you use their mortgage broker to help your tenant buyer get financed. And I did a whole interview about Quality Credit, about half-an-hour interview on one of our last group coaching calls. I'm going to be posting that on the website real soon here. But there are options and alternatives. So I also wanted to read this too. Read some of my response in this forum to you. Okay. I always ask mortgage brokers this kind of what-if scenario, right? So what if a tenant buyer does a lease option on a house with an owner and puts $5,000 down? Okay, this homeowner has a house, he's renting it out, he wants to do a lease option, and the tenant buyer cuts him a check for $5,000 for the option deposit, which gets credited to his down payment when he buys the home. 6-8 months later, the homeowner decides, you know what, I just want to sell my house to another investor. Another investor buys the house. All of the leases and the lease option that's currently tied to that house gets transferred to the new owner, right? Well, a year later after that, the tenant buyer decides, I'm going to buy my house now. Problem. This option deposit check that he made 2 years ago was made out to the previous owner. I asked the mortgage broker, do you think the underwriter is going to have a problem with using that money towards the down payment? And always the answer is no. Because, why? The check was made out to the original owner of the home. The check was made out to who the contract was with. So it's the same thing here when we're flipping these lease options. It's a lease option contract between you, the investor, and Johnny, the tenant buyer. Johnny, the tenant buyer, has to make the option deposit check out to you or to an escrow company. Okay? So it's just play these what-if games. It's not that big of a deal. I've been doing this for a long time. There are banks that maybe have some problems with it, but I've always been able to find a bank who would allow it to happen. I know other investors that have been doing this for longer than I have been doing this, and they've never had a problem with it either. So my point is that the option deposit check can't be made out to the seller because it's a contract between you and the tenant buyer. And if the house would have been under different ownership and that owner would have sold it, you know, the bank would still allow that to be part of the option deposit. Sorry about all the noise at Starbucks. This stuff happens all the time. And that's all I have to say about that. So I hope my thoughts were clear and articulate, but I hope that helps. See ya.